What's up, guys? Woodshed Wednesday back again. I want to thank everybody so far for checking out the videos, all the positive feedback. Thanks to John and all the other people over there at the SRV gear page on Facebook. It's been a lot of fun interacting with everybody. Today I wanted to talk about maybe a prelude to that second part of the SRV pedal board video I was going to do. This might be able to wrap it all up in one. So really I got a lot of questions about what's a good SRV tube screamer setting. Look at some of the documented interviews and Stevie talking, and he was using the tube screamer as a clean boost, and that makes a lot of sense listening to his playing and understanding he was from that old school of just plugging into a couple of Fender amps daisy chained together and just wanting that nice clean sound. But for some of that ramped up stuff, like maybe the Hendrix stuff or that heavy blues stuff, he wanted a little push. And using something as a clean boost is essentially trying to take his amplifier and just make it sound the same tone, but louder or a little bigger, more bloom to it. So we've read that he maybe would run the drive off, set the tone somewhere like that, at about the noon position, full level. I don't necessarily think he was running it full level, only because it does something a little weird there to the tone, and I didn't really hear that happen in Stevie's playing. A lot of this using a tube screamer as a clean boost, he said himself he hadn't found anything else that worked. Makes a lot of sense seeing him use a TS10 in the later years too, because a TS10 is quite affordable and is probably the cleanest boost via a tube screamer type pedal. It's a great pedal and they're affordable. So when you take something like this, and you run it like this, and you may be in your home playing through your Princeton, your Blues Deluxe, your Deluxe, or your Super Reverb, and you can't really get the volume up. If you step on this pedal, it's going to sound totally contrasted. It's not going to sound anything like the amp. It's not going to sound organic. You're going to get one tone from the amp, and then you step on this. With these settings, you try it, and it's just going to be a bunch of loud bark, not pleasing to the ear. Same thing with like the TS9. I would run a TS9 the same way, and I prefer the TS9 for the warmer stuff. This TS808 is one I found recently, and it stays extremely clear no matter what. It doesn't add any kind of funky mid-range stuff that the TS9 sometimes do. It's just really, really clear. So I use this pedal for the video. Not being able to push your amp to the point where the tubes and the amp starts breaking up for you, or in the zone of it working to its full potential, is a real issue, especially when chasing, SRV tone. I don't think anybody will ever nail it. You know what I mean? There are a bunch of guys that come close, and they'll all tell you the same thing. Volume is a key factor in it. Like I said, nobody's heard stories of Stevie playing so quiet. He was known to blow your ears off your head. And you look at all these guys we listen to, Tommy Katona gets great tone, and he's playing respectfully at a loud volume. Wes Jeans, Philip Sace, Jesse Davey, Doyle Bramhall, J.D. Simo. All of these guys are getting this superb tone from these Fender-based amps, Fender-style amps. They're not playing them quietly, and that's a big, big factor in that sound. The transition from playing, just your straight direct in the amp tone to stepping on a tube screamer, when Stevie was playing it, was almost seamless. It didn't jump out at you as if you're at home with your Princeton or your Deluxe Reverb and you're stepping on it because somebody told you some SRV settings to try and it's not working. It's because the amp is already in that natural liftoff state. It's already in that organically broken up, pushing the tubes, pushing the front end state. So when you step on this set up as a clean boost, it's just pushing your signal and making it a little wider and a little more directional in a way. It's pushing that headroom. You hear a lot of guys talk about, I need something with more headroom. That's really what it's doing. It's getting you over the top. And, the tube screamer was used basically, it's designed to be an overdrive, and Stevie found a way to use it as a clean boost, and it was really cool because he was using it to his own intentions, to his own interpretations. He didn't use it to make overdrive, and essentially he was playing so loud that he was overdriving it. I really feel that some of his settings, you can see in the Elma Combo DVD especially, he's pointing his toe down there and he's adjusting that knob, especially before Voodoo Child. I do have a bootleg copy of the 1983 Austin City Limits. It's the entire show unedited, all the mess ups, all the bloopers. And in that, Stevie is basically testing the tube screamer, and he's shutting it on and off, and you're basically hearing his direct signal into his amps, and then when he steps on the tube screamer, it's just sounding like the amp is turned up. It's not sounding like two totally different sounds. He's just facilitating a push or a clean boost. Also, you know, he would have the tube screamer in a loop or on a looper, that MXR looper that you're going to see in the video. And he's basically just using that as a tube screamer foot switch. But when it's off, when he steps on that switch and the tube screamer is off, it's basically taking the tube screamer out of the circuit. So your clean signal from the guitar straight to the amp is still passing through. Totally reminiscent of those old school blues guys, especially a lot of those guys, you know what I mean, that were just playing a Strat with a 20-foot cable plugged into a couple of Fender amps. Ronnie Earl, Jimmy Vaughan, even Stevie in the beginning, but all those heavy dudes were just doing that, and that was their thing, you know, no pedals needed. I'm just going to show you some sound. It's nothing crazy. I'm not playing songs note for note. I'm just running through some SRV style licks using some SRV style settings with the tube screamer. And you'll note that I'll show you the on and the off tone, how it's just sounding like the amp is pushed up, and then when it's off, the amp is just straight into the amp. I'm using my 1959 Strat, and I'm using my 1964 Pro that Tommy Cougar had just given a checkup to, and Cesar Diaz modified in 1990. It's a really, really crazy story around this amp, and I hope to share it with you guys someday. Also, I'm filming this after the playing, and midway through the playing, I blew a JBL speaker, so bear with me if it comes across. I haven't listened to the footage yet. But yeah, this is something to maybe save yourself some time, and, you know, a tube screamer is still going to sound great if you go like this, and you turn the level down. If you get that level down, and you can still give your amp that lifting characteristic to where your straight in tone is one way, and adjusting the knobs to facilitate your playing, not because Stevie Ray Vaughan had him set like that, not because Jesse Davey did, or Philip Sace, or whatever guy you're into, you know what I mean? You got to find your way. You got to find your tone in it. You have to find what suits your setup. A lot of guys will build rigs around their pedals, and, you know, I think that you have to find your sound from the guitar plugged into the amp first. And once you get your sound, and once you sound how you want with that guitar plugged into the amp, nothing in line, just guitar, amp, anything else you put on there should really be adjusted and worked into it so it adds color and it adds a dimension to your tone instead of taking away from it. Because now we're just going backwards, and who wants to do that? What, you know, he was doing there, getting the amp pushing the steam and then just using the tube screamer to put it up that much more. It wasn't a necessity. It wasn't his gigs, and his playing wasn't deterrent of the tube screamer. He could play a gig without one, and he did for years, you know what I mean? And sometimes when these pedals would go down before the show, you're hearing Stevie just playing right into some cranked up amps. You can see a lot of his, you know, amp adjustments. Just watch bootlegs and try to find as many bootleg videos as you can. You can see him fiddling with stuff down in there. Just pay close attention to that El Macambo video too, because you can see him adjusting settings on the tube screamer, and it's really cool. He was trying to get a little more drive for the Hendrix stuff, and it's really wild to see. You know? This is a 1964 Fender Pro. Has been modified by Cesar Diaz in the past, but that's not really any kind of, you know, quick fix for SRV tone or anything like that. The real crux of it is getting these 45 watt, 50 watt amplifiers to get into their zone of breakup to where they have a natural breakup to them. Because if you know, if you're in your home, in your bedroom, and you got this amp on 3, you'll get some great clean lush Lenny tones, some great Riviera Paradise tones, and maybe some nice clean rhythm tones. But that real spanky snap, you know, pull off position SRV kind of fast lick playing is not going to come organically from the amp, because the amp's not working to its efficiency. So really a big part of that, like I was saying, is getting those tubes, getting the amps hot, getting that thing turned up. You know, and most people, granted, they can't do that in their house. They can't blast it, you know, and they can't really get a 45 watt amp screaming. But that was really the secret. Anybody who ever saw Stevie never said he was quiet as a player, you know. Treble, you want that treble to come through. By nature, you know, guitar is a mid-range instrument, so we like that top end to break through. And I tend to keep the bass a little low, just enough to keep the speaker to give me a little resistance and a little breakup, but I don't want it flubbing out. So, you know what I mean? I'll go through some tones, like I said, but the real secret of it, and I try to push this on everybody who asks, you know, what's a tube screamer setting, or what can I do, what pickups for SRV tone. It's really in getting the amp to break up and having the amplifier work to its full potential. And, you know, I know a lot of us can't really do that, and maybe we start looking into a lower wattage setup that stays clean a little bit. Like, I also really like a deluxe reverb because it's 22 watts. It's got a single 12-inch speaker. You can run it on 5. It's a little less harsh than a 410 amp. And, you know, it breaks up amazingly, and it has great tone. All right, so like I said, we're going to run through some tones showing you the kind of the way the tube screamer fit in there. I'll give you the clean tone, and then I'll show you the tube screamer in the circuit. And it's, again, like I said, it was more meant to be seamless. The tube screamer is on a looper, so my direct signal going to the amp is still technically guitar, true bypass right to the amplifier. The wah-wah in line is true bypassed. So here's the clean signal. Some tones. That's my concept of how Stevie was using the Tube Screamer. I hope you guys can maybe apply this to your playing or apply this to your setup and not feel so pigeonholed or it has to be a certain way because somebody else did it. It'll react differently. The Tube Screamer will react differently. It'll almost show you a different side of itself once you do have the amps cranked up like that. And it'll almost sound like, do I have the Tube Screamer on or not? You'll have to second guess yourself. So really making those adjustments to making that transition from straight in tone to the Tube Screamer inline should really be almost seamless. You're going to hear some brightness because the Tube Screamer will never match a naturally, plugged in tone because of just the way it's designed. And the Tube Screamer is also one of those pedals that I recommend if you're going to buy an old one, try as many of them as you can because they were all designed differently. The circuits were the same, but the chips they used, the clipping diodes, all these things are a heavy, heavy factor. Advice too, when searching for an overdrive pedal, it doesn't have to be a Tube Screamer for your SRV kind of stuff. I really like the Duelist from Kingtone. I like the Blues Power from Kingtone because it really fattens up the tone. I like the MJM Blues Devil. That's an old one. So there are so many different, tools to throw into the mix to find your sound. It really just takes time, really knowing what you want to hear and trying to play as much stuff as you you can get your hands on to see what you like. Don't be afraid to ask people, you know, some questions about their gear, questions about their pedals. All they can say is no, you know what I mean? Or all they just not answer you. And that's fine, you know what I mean? You go on, ask the next guy. But it's really a search. I just feel like one of the biggest things to Stevie Ray Vaughan's tone is having amps pushed. And, you know, I try to push that message a lot to guys. I don't, you know, I'll help anybody who's ever sent me a message knows I try to do the best I can to help anybody. But when everybody says, you know, what's the best pickups for SRV Tone? Man, he was just playing a Strat with pickups in it. There wasn't anything special. You know what I mean? The guitar in his hands with that action, with that pickup height set up the way he liked it, you know, through his rig in his hands was magic. Just like Phil Sace, just like Doyle Bramhall, Jesse Davey, Josh Smith, all these guys, they just have created this, Joe Bonamassa, they've created this amazing tone, and it's their playing. They can sound like that on an Epiphone, they can sound like that on a Squier, they can sound like themselves. Great boutique stuff does help, but it's not the end-all be-all of sounding good. You know, some people may not agree with me, but some people might, and I hope I can shed a little light on some of this stuff and, you know, push you guys to go on your own quest to find your sound. You know what I mean? Because the minute I stopped trying to replicate everything and buy expensive this and this and that, and once I got happy with a little dirtier tone, and once I got happy with, you know, this tube, or I started, you know, finding that it was easier to kind of sound like a little bit of Jimmy, a little bit of Stevie, a little bit of this guy and the next guy. And that's what the fun of it is different guitars and just chasing your own tone. That's the greatest part for me. And I'm thankful, you know, especially this week coming up, I'm extremely thankful to have you guys, to have the ability to do these videos and share some info with you. So yeah, there's my take on the Stevie Ray Vaughan Tube Screamer settings and how he was using it. Once again, too, I want to say, you know, I put a couple posts on my Facebook and my Instagram, but we're coming up on the last month to reach a goal of 5,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. I appreciate everybody who's subbed and everybody who watches these videos and comments and likes, and even, you know, the negative comments. I'm expecting it, and, you know, it's all good, man. I got no beef with anybody. I got no problem. You can say whatever you want to say, you know. But I want to let you know that because you guys have supported me so much, I'm also supporting you. You know, my good friend Philip Sace, my good friend JD Simo, a couple of the manufacturers that I've worked with, a couple of the companies, they're going to donate some stuff for giveaways. So if we reach that 5,000 subscriber goal, you guys, and it's not a certain person, it's going to be picked at random, but you guys are going to get rewarded, whether it be some t-shirts, some autographed CDs, whatever I can do to give back, I will. So please help me spread the word, share the good word. Let's try to get to 5,000 subscribers because we can only go up from there. I appreciate everybody supporting me, and we'll check in soon. Peace.